The small town of Maplewood was the kind of place where nothing much happened. It was quiet, peaceful, and everyone knew each other's names. People waved when they passed on the street, kids rode their bikes down tree-lined roads, and life moved at a slow, comfortable pace. On this particular summer afternoon, the air was thick with heat, and the sun hung high in the sky like a golden coin. The kind of day that made ice cream sound like the best idea in the world. Scoops and Smiles, the local ice cream shop, was packed with families trying to escape the heat. Inside, the shop buzzed with laughter and chatter. Brightly colored posters of ice cream sundaes and milkshakes decorated the walls, and the sweet smell of waffle cones filled the air. Behind the counter, the staff worked quickly to keep up with the long line of customers. Outside, a few picnic tables were set up under shady umbrellas, giving people a place to sit and enjoy their treats. Emma Wilson sat at one of those tables, her legs swinging back and forth as she licked her chocolate ice cream cone. At 10 years, old Emma was the kind of kid who always had her nose buried in a book. She loved science fiction stories about aliens, spaceships, and distant planets. Her older brother Jake rolled his eyes whenever she talked about them, but Emma didn't care. To her, the idea of life beyond Earth wasn't just exciting, it felt possible. Jake, on the other hand, was more interested in his phone than anything else. At 14, he spent most of his time scrolling through social media or playing games. He wasn't paying much attention to his sister or the world around him as he leaned back in his chair, headphones dangling around his neck. His vanilla ice cream was starting to melt, dripping onto the table in sticky puddles. "Jake, look," Emma said suddenly, pointing toward the sky. "Do you see that?" Jake glanced up lazily, squinting against the bright sunlight. "See what?" he asked, his voice dripping with boredom. "There's something weird in the air," Emma insisted. "It looks like ripples, like when you drop a rock in water." Jake frowned and looked again. For a moment he thought he saw it too, a faint shimmer, almost like heat waves, but different somehow. It didn't last long, though, and soon the sky looked normal again. "You're imagining things," he said, shrugging. "Probably just the heat messing with your eyes." Emma wasn't convinced, but before she could say anything else, a loud rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. Everyone froze, ice cream forgotten for a moment. The sound was low and deep, like thunder rolling across the horizon, but there were no clouds in sight. A few people laughed nervously, assuming it was just a truck driving by or some construction work nearby. But then it happened again, louder this time, and the ground trembled harder. "What's going on?" Lisa Carter asked, clutching her son Ben's hand tightly. Lisa was a young mother, barely in her 30s, with short brown hair and a worried expression that seemed permanently etched onto her face. Ben, her 4-year-old son, looked up at her with wide eyes, sensing her fear. No one had an answer. The rumbling grew louder, and the ground shook so violently that some of the picnic tables tipped over. People started backing away from the shop, unsure of what to do. And then, without warning, the sky above them split open. At least that's what it felt like. A massive object descended from the heavens, blotting out the sun and casting the entire area into shadow. It was a spaceship, huge, metallic, and utterly alien. Its surface gleamed with an unnatural light, reflecting the panic-stricken faces of the crowd below. No one spoke. No one moved. They could only stare in stunned silence as the vessel hovered, directly above Scoops and Smiles. For a brief moment there was a deafening silence, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Then, with a flash of blinding light, a beam shot down from the ship, striking the ice cream shop with terrifying precision. The building exploded in an instant, reduced to rubble and ash. Screams erupted from every direction as people ran for cover, desperate to get away from the destruction. Emma grabbed Jake's arm, pulling him toward the parking lot. "We have to go," she shouted, her voice trembling with fear. Jake stumbled after her, still clutching his half-melted ice cream cone like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. Behind them, Lisa scooped Ben into her arms and sprint can出问题后，请允许我继续完成这段内容。以下是续写部分。Behind them, Lisa scooped Ben into her arms and sprinted toward her car, tears streaming down her face. The scene was chaos. People shouting, children crying, and debris scattered everywhere. The once cheerful ice cream shop was now a smoldering ruin, smoke rising into the air like a dark cloud. As the initial shock began to wear off, strange things started happening. Emma felt a tingling sensation spreading through her body, starting at her fingertips and moving upward. At first she thought it was just adrenaline, but the feeling persisted, growing stronger with each passing second. Jake noticed something odd too. His reflexes seemed sharper than usual. When he tripped over a piece of rubble, he caught himself, mid-fall with ease, as if his body had moved faster than his brain could process. Nearby, Lisa struggled to calm Ben, who was sobbing uncontrollably. But then something even stranger occurred. Ben stopped crying and looked up at his mother with an expression far too serious for a child his age. "Mommy," he said in a clear, steady voice. "I'm okay." The words sent chills down Lisa's spine. Her little boy rarely spoke in full sentences, let alone with such clarity. Unbeknownst to anyone, the alien beam hadn't just destroyed the shop, it had unleashed something extraordinary. The energy that had torn through the building had seeped into the surrounding area, affecting everyone nearby. Those closest to the blast site began exhibiting unusual symptoms, their bodies changing in ways no one could explain. Emma's tingling sensation intensified, and she raised her hands instinctively, as if to shield herself from an invisible force. To her astonishment, tiny sparks of light danced between her fingers, flickering like fireflies. She gasped, staring at her hands in disbelief. "Jake, look," she whispered, her voice shaking. Jake turned to her, his brow furrowed in confusion. "What are you talking about?" he asked. But then he saw it, the faint glow emanating from her palms. "Okay, this is officially freaky," he muttered, taking a step back. Meanwhile, Lisa watched in awe as Ben reached out and lifted a fallen branch with his tiny hand. Except it wasn't his hand doing the lifting. The branch floated into the air as if carried by an invisible string. Lisa's heart raced. Was this real? Or had the trauma of the attack caused her to hallucinate before anyone could make sense of what was happening? The sound of sirens pierced the air. Emergency vehicles arrived within minutes, their flashing lights cutting through the haze of smoke and dust. Government agents followed close behind, clad in dark suits and sunglasses despite the gloomy atmosphere. One of them stepped forward, addressing the crowd with a calm but authoritative tone. "My name is Agent Ryan Hayes," he announced, his voice carrying over the din. "We're here to ensure your safety and investigate the incident. Please remain calm and cooperate with our team." Agent Hayes scanned the crowd, his sharp eyes landing on Emma and Jake. He approached them cautiously, noting the way Emma kept glancing at her glowing hands. "Are you two all right?" he asked, his tone softer now. Emma hesitated, unsure of how to respond. I think so," she stammered. "But something's wrong with me." Hayes nodded, his expression unreadable. "Can you show me what you mean?" With a shaky breath, Emma held out her hands, allowing the tiny lights to dance across her skin. Hayes studied the phenomenon closely, his mind racing with possibilities. Whatever had happened here was unlike anything he'd encountered before. Jake, meanwhile, couldn't stop fidgeting. He clenched and unclenched his fists, testing the newfound strength he felt coursing through his veins. When a metal trash can nearby toppled over, he instinctively lunged to catch it, and succeeded with ease. His eyes widened in shock as he realized the implications. Lisa stepped forward, holding Ben tightly. "My son," she began, her voice trembling. "He did something impossible." Hayes turned his attention to Ben, who gazed up at him with curious eyes. "Show me," Hayes urged gently. Ben extended his hand, and a nearby pebble rose into the air, hovering for a moment before dropping back to the ground. Hayes exchanged a glance with one of his colleagues, both of them clearly unsettled by what they were witnessing. The survivors gathered around, murmuring amongst themselves. Some were frightened, others intrigued, but all shared a sense of unease. What had the aliens done to them? And why? As the agents worked to contain the situation, Emma stared up at the sky where the alien ship still loomed ominously. Her mind raced with questions. Had the aliens meant to do this? Or was it an accident? One thing was certain. Life in Maplewood, and perhaps the entire world, would never be the same again. The days following the attack on Scoops and Smiles were unlike anything Maplewood had ever experienced. The town, once peaceful and quiet, was now filled with tension and fear. News of the alien invasion spread quickly, not just through Maplewood, but across the entire country. People watched the footage of the massive spaceship hovering above the destroyed ice cream shop, replaying it over and over again on their TVs and phones. Experts debated what the aliens wanted, but no one had any real answers. For Emma Wilson, Jake, Lisa Carter, Ben, and the others who had been near the blast site, life became even stranger. The changes they had noticed in themselves after the attack only grew stronger with each passing day. Emma's hands continued to glow faintly, and she discovered that she could make the light brighter if she focused hard enough. Sometimes, when she wasn't paying attention, the light would flicker unexpectedly, startling her. Jake found that his strength and speed were far beyond normal. He accidentally broke a chair at home when he sat down too hard, and when he played basketball with his friends, he moved so fast they couldn't keep up. Ben, Lisa's 4-year-old son, amazed everyone with his newfound abilities. He didn't just lift small objects like pebbles anymore. He could move bigger things like toys or even furniture, with just a thought. One morning, Lisa woke up to find Ben floating a glass of water across the kitchen table toward her. She screamed, dropping the spoon she had been holding, and Ben laughed as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I brought you juice, Mommy," he said cheerfully. Lisa hugged him tightly, unsure whether to feel proud or terrified. Agent Ryan Hayes and his team stayed in Maplewood, setting up a temporary base near the ruins of the ice cream shop. They conducted tests on the survivors, trying to understand the strange energy that had changed them. At first, Hayes kept his questions simple, asking how they felt and what they could do. But as the days went on, the tests became more intense. Blood samples were taken, brain scans were performed, and the survivors were asked to demonstrate their abilities under controlled conditions. Emma hated the tests. She didn't like being poked and prodded, and she especially didn't like the way some of the scientists looked at her, as if she were a lab rat instead of a person. Still, she cooperated because she wanted answers. "Why is this happening to us?" she asked Hayes one afternoon after another round of experiments. Her voice was quiet but firm, and her glowing hands trembled slightly as she clenched them into fists. Hayes sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "We're still trying to figure that out," he admitted. "Whatever that beam was, it seems to have altered your biology. You're not human anymore, not entirely." The words hit Emma like a punch to the gut. Not entirely human. What did that mean? Was she turning into something else? Something alien? She wanted to cry, but she held back her tears, determined to stay strong. Jake, meanwhile, struggled with his own emotions. His new powers made him feel invincible, but they also scared him. He kept having nightmares about losing control, about hurting someone without meaning to. During one test, he accidentally crushed a metal pipe in his hands, bending it like it was made of paper. The scientists stared at him in awe, jotting notes furiously, but Jake felt sick to his stomach. "I didn't mean to do that," he muttered, staring at his trembling hands. Lisa tried to stay positive for Ben's sake, but it was hard. Every time he used his powers, she worried about what might happen next. Would he lose control? Would the government take him away? She confided in Emma one evening, sitting on a bench outside the temporary base. "I don't know what to do," Lisa confessed, her voice breaking. "He's my baby boy, but sometimes I'm afraid of him." Emma nodded, understanding exactly how Lisa felt. "We'll figure this out together," she promised. "All of us." As the survivors adjusted to their new reality, the aliens, dubbed the Scourge by the military, continued their assault on Earth. More ships appeared in the skies above major cities, unleashing devastating attacks. Buildings crumbled, Fires raged, and thousands of people fled in terror. Traditional weapons proved useless against the aliens' advanced technology. Missiles exploded harmlessly against their shields, and fighter jets were shot down before they could get close. The government scrambled to respond, but it was clear that humanity was outmatched. Desperation set in as leaders realized that conventional tactics wouldn't work. That's when Agent Hayes proposed a bold idea: use the transformed survivors as weapons. They're our best chance, he argued during a meeting with top officials. Their abilities are unlike anything we've ever seen. If we train them properly, they might be able to fight back. The suggestion sparked heated debates. Some officials were horrified at the thought of sending civilians, especially children, into battle. Others saw no other option. In the end, Hayes got his way, and a secret training program was launched. The survivors were taken to a secure facility deep in the mountains, far from prying eyes. There they would learn to control their powers and prepare for the fight of their lives. Emma, Jake, Lisa, and Ben boarded a bus along with several other survivors, including Marcus Doyle, a former firefighter with a kind smile and a protective nature, and Clara Bennett, a shy teenager whose voice carried an eerie power. As the bus drove away from Maplewood, Emma pressed her face against the window, watching her hometown disappear behind a curtain of trees. She felt a lump in her throat but refused to cry. She wasn't just leaving Maplewood behind, she was leaving her old life behind too. The facility was hidden in a remote valley, surrounded by towering mountains and dense forests. It looked more like a military base than a training camp, with high fences, guard towers, and rows of gray buildings. Inside, the survivors were greeted by a team of trainers led by Agent Hayes. "Welcome," he said, standing in front of the group. "You've been chosen because you're special, because you have the potential to save humanity. But it won't be easy. You'll need to push yourselves harder than you ever have before." Training began immediately, starting with basic exercises designed to help the survivors understand their abilities. Emma practiced controlling her light, learning how to make it brighter, dimmer, or change colors. At first it was frustrating. Sometimes, the light would flare unpredictably, blinding everyone around her, but she slowly gained better control. Jake worked on honing his strength and speed, practicing dodging obstacles and lifting heavy weights. He learned to channel his aggression into focus, though it wasn't always easy. Ben's training was the most challenging. His telekinetic powers were incredibly strong, but he lacked discipline. During one session, he accidentally sent a chair flying across the room, narrowly missing Clara. Lisa apologized profusely, but Clara just smiled. "It's okay," she said softly. "We're all learning." Clara herself faced unique challenges. Her voice had the ability to shatter objects, but using it required immense concentration. She spent hours practicing, singing scales and speaking loudly until her throat was sore. Marcus, with his pyrokinetic abilities, could create flames with a snap of his fingers, but controlling the fire was tricky. He accidentally burned a training dummy to ashes during one exercise, earning both cheers and nervous laughter from the others. Despite the difficulties, the group began to bond. They shared meals together, joked during breaks, and supported each other through tough moments. Emma admired Marcus's courage and Clara's determination. Jake teased Ben about his love of peanut butter sandwiches, and Lisa laughed along, grateful for the sense of camaraderie. For the first time since the attack, they felt like they weren't alone. But the looming threat of the scourge cast a shadow over everything. Reports came in daily about new attacks, new destruction, cities burned, and millions fled their homes. The aliens showed no mercy, no signs of stopping. It was clear that the survivors' training wasn't just about mastering their powers, it was about preparing for war. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of practice, Emma sat outside with Jake staring up at the stars. The sky was clear, dotted with countless pinpricks of light. "Do you think there's anyone else out there?" Emma asked quietly. "Other humans like us?" Jake shrugged, tossing a pebble into the distance. "Maybe. Or maybe we're the only ones." Emma frowned, her mind racing. "Do you think we can really beat them? The aliens, I mean." Jake hesitated. then nodded. "We have to. There's no other choice." Emma smiled faintly, feeling a spark of hope. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. She and the others weren't going to give up without a fight. Whatever it took, they would protect their planet and their humanity. The training at the secret facility grew more intense with each passing day. The survivors pushed themselves harder than they ever thought possible, determined to master their abilities and prepare for the fight ahead. Emma Wilson spent hours in a dimly lit room, practicing her light manipulation. At first, she struggled to control the bursts of energy that sometimes escaped her hands without warning. But as the days went on, she learned to focus her mind, channeling the light into shapes and patterns. She could create glowing orbs that hovered in the air, beams of light that cut through darkness, and even illusions that fooled the eye. Jake, meanwhile, worked tirelessly to harness his newfound strength and speed. He practiced dodging projectiles fired from automated machines, testing his reflexes until they were razor sharp. His trainers challenged him to lift heavier and heavier objects, pushing his limits until he could toss a car engine across the room like it was a toy. Despite his progress, Jake still wrestled with fear of losing control, of hurting someone unintentionally. But every time doubt crept into his mind, he reminded himself why he was doing this. He had to protect his family, his town, and everyone else who couldn't fight back. Little Ben amazed everyone with how quickly he adapted to his telekinetic powers. Under Lisa's watchful eye, he learned to move objects with precision, stacking blocks in midair, or spinning toys in perfect circles. His favorite trick was making his stuffed bear dance, which always brought smiles to the group. But Ben's abilities weren't just playful, they were powerful. During one training exercise, he lifted an entire table off the ground and held it steady for several minutes. Lisa beamed with pride but also felt a pang of worry. How much stronger would he become? And what would happen if he lost control? Clara Bennett's voice became both a weapon and a tool. She discovered that her sonic blast could shatter glass, disable electronics, and even knock over large objects. Her trainers encouraged her to experiment with different pitches and volumes, teaching her how to aim her power with accuracy. It wasn't easy. Using her ability left her throat raw and her head pounding, but Clara refused to give up. Every time she succeeded, she felt a surge of confidence she'd never known before. Marcus Doyle, the former firefighter, embraced his pyrokinetic abilities with determination. He learned to summon flames with a snap of his fingers and shape them into fiery constructs, a shield, a spear, or even a wall of fire. The heat didn't bother him. In fact, it felt comforting, like an extension of himself. Marcus often joked that he'd always wanted to be a superhero, though no one laughed at first. But as the group saw how fearless and selfless he was, they began to trust him completely. Agent Ryan Hayes oversaw the training program, watching the survivors grow stronger and more confident. He admired their resilience, their willingness to face challenges most people couldn't imagine. Still, Hayes couldn't shake the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. These were ordinary people, kids, parents, neighbors, who had been thrust into an extraordinary situation. Sending them into battle against the Scourge felt wrong, but he knew there was no other choice. Humanity's survival depended on them. As the survivors honed their skills, the world outside continued to burn. The aliens launched relentless attacks, targeting cities and military bases with devastating precision. News reports showed images of destruction, skyscrapers reduced to rubble, streets littered with debris, and countless lives lost. Governments around the globe pleaded for help, but traditional weapons proved useless against the Scourge's advanced technology. Missiles exploded harmlessly against their shields, and fighter jets were shot down before they could get close. Amidst the chaos, the survivors received their first mission. Agent Hayes gathered the group in a briefing room, his expression serious. "We've identified an alien outpost in the ruins of Chicago," he explained, pointing to a map projected on the wall. "It's heavily guarded, but we believe it contains valuable information about the Scourge's plans. Your job is to infiltrate the outpost, retrieve the data, and get out alive." Emma's heart raced as she listened. This was it. the moment they'd been training for. But it was also terrifying. What if they failed? What if they got hurt? Or worse? She glanced at Jake, who looked equally nervous, and then at Ben, sitting quietly in Lisa's lap. Even Marcus and Clara seemed uneasy. They weren't soldiers. They were just people trying to survive. Yet here they were, being asked to risk everything. "We can do this," Emma said finally, breaking the silence. Her voice wavered, but her eyes were steady. "We've trained for this. We're ready." One by one, the others nodded in agreement. They might not have chosen this path, but they had no choice now. Failure wasn't an option, not when so many lives depended on them. The mission began under the cover of darkness. The team traveled to Chicago in a heavily armored vehicle, guided by GPS coordinates provided by Hayes's team. When they arrived, the city was a wasteland. Buildings lay in ruins, streets were deserted, and the air smelled of smoke and ash. The alien outpost loomed in the distance, a towering structure made of sleek metallic material that glinted eerily in the moonlight. "Stay close and stick to the plan," Hayes reminded them over their earpieces. "And remember, you're our best shot at stopping these things." Emma took a deep breath, focusing her mind. She raised her hands, creating a glowing orb of light to guide the way. Jake led the group, his heightened senses alert for any signs of danger. Lisa carried Ben, who clung tightly to her neck, while Marcus and Clara brought up the rear, ready to defend the group if needed. Their journey through the ruins was tense. Every shadow seemed to hide an enemy, every sound like a potential threat. Twice they encountered alien drones patrolling the area. Both times, Emma used her light to create dazzling illusions, distracting the machines long enough for the group to slip past unnoticed. Clara's voice came in handy too, disabling a drone with a sharp blast when it got too close. When they reached the outpost, the real challenge began. The entrance was sealed by a massive door, reinforced with alien technology. Marcus stepped forward, summoning flames to melt the lock. It took several minutes, but eventually the door creaked open, revealing a dark labyrinthine interior. Inside, the air was cold and sterile, filled with strange humming sounds. The walls glowed faintly, casting an eerie light that made everyone uneasy. The team moved cautiously, sticking to the shadows. They encountered alien creatures, tall, insect-like beings with multiple limbs and glowing eyes. Jake's speed proved invaluable as he darted between the creatures, knocking them aside before they could react. Clara followed up with her sonic blasts, disorienting the aliens and giving the group time to escape. At one point, the team found themselves trapped in a narrow corridor, surrounded by hostile creatures. Panic set in as the aliens closed in, their claws clicking menacingly. Just when it seemed hopeless, Ben raised his tiny hand, using his telekinesis to slam the creatures against the walls. The others stared in awe as the boy saved them all. Finally, they reached the core of the outpost, a room filled with alien computers and strange devices. Emma approached the main terminal, her fingers trembling as she pressed buttons randomly, hoping to trigger something useful. To her relief, the screen lit up, displaying streams of data written in an unfamiliar language. "We need to download this," she said urgently. "Clara, can you disable the security system?" Clara nodded, stepping forward to sing a low, resonant note that disrupted the nearby cameras. While she worked, Emma inserted a USB drive provided by Hayes's team and began transferring the files. The process was agonizingly slow, and the group tensed as they heard the sound of approaching footsteps. "We don't have much time," Jake warned, taking a defensive stance near the door. Just as the data finished downloading, the aliens burst into the room. Chaos erupted as the team fought to hold them off. Marcus unleashed a wave of fire, forcing the creatures to retreat temporarily. Jake tackled one of the aliens, pinning it to the ground, while Clara used her voice to shatter a nearby console, creating a barrier between them and the rest of the attackers. "Let's go," Hayes shouted over the comlink. "You've got what you need." The team sprinted toward the exit, dodging enemies and hazards along the way. By the time they reached the surface, they were battered and exhausted, but alive. As they climbed into the waiting vehicle, Emma clutched the USB drive tightly, knowing it held the key to humanity's survival. Back at the facility, the data revealed shocking information. The Scourge wasn't just invading Earth. They were harvesting biological material to create super soldiers for their own intergalactic wars. The energy released during the ice cream shop attack was part of a failed experiment meant to accelerate this process. Instead, it had empowered humans, turning them into unpredictable threats. Emma realized that their powers weren't just weapons, they were gifts born out of tragedy. Inspired by their success in Chicago, the group vowed to keep fighting. They knew the road ahead would be dangerous, but they also knew they couldn't give up. For Maplewood, for humanity, and for the future, they would stand together and face whatever came next. The survivors returned to the facility after their mission in Chicago, battered but triumphant. The data they had retrieved from the alien outpost revealed crucial information about the Scourge's plans, but it also raised more questions than answers. The aliens weren't just invading Earth. They were using humanity as a resource, harvesting biological material to create super soldiers for their own intergalactic wars. The energy released during the ice cream shop attack was part of a failed experiment meant to accelerate this process. Instead, it had empowered humans, turning them into unpredictable threats. Emma Wilson couldn't stop thinking about what she had learned. Sitting alone in her room, she stared at the USB drive that now held the key to humanity's survival. Her glowing hands rested on her lap, faintly illuminating the dark space. She felt a mix of emotions: pride, fear, and determination. They had succeeded in retrieving the data, but the stakes were higher than ever before. If the Scourge discovered how powerful the transformed humans were, they wouldn't hesitate to eliminate them. Jake joined her later that evening, leaning against the doorframe with a tired expression. "You okay?" he asked, his voice soft. Emma nodded but didn't look up. "I just keep thinking about what we're fighting for," she said. "It's not just about stopping them anymore, it's about proving we're more than what they think we are." Jake sighed, sitting down beside her. "Yeah, I get it. But sometimes I wonder if we're ready for this. I mean, we're not soldiers. We're just us," Emma smiled faintly. "We've come so far already. Look at Ben, he can move things with his mind. Clara's voice can take down drones. And you? You're stronger and faster than anyone I've ever seen. We're not just us anymore." Jake chuckled weakly. "I guess you're right. Still, it feels like we're playing with fire." They sat in silence for a while, each lost in their thoughts. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, and the distant hum of machinery reminded them where they were. The facility was safe, for now. But none of them could forget the horrors happening beyond its walls. Cities burned. Families were torn apart, and millions of lives hung in the balance. The next morning, Agent Ryan Hayes called a meeting to discuss the data. Everyone gathered in the briefing room, their faces serious as Hayes projected images onto the wall. "This is what we're dealing with," he began, pointing to diagrams of alien technology and schematics of their ships. "The Scourge views humans as inferior beings unworthy of survival. Their goal isn't just conquest, it's extermination." Lisa Carter clutched Ben's hand tightly, her knuckles white. "But why?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why would they go through all this trouble just to destroy us?" Hayes hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "From what we've gathered, the Scourge has been waging wars across the galaxy for centuries. They need resources to fuel their armies, and Earth is rich in biological material. When their experiment backfired, it created an unforeseen problem. You, humans, who are immune to their weapons and capable of fighting back." Marcus Doyle leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "So what does that mean for us? Are we just pawns in their game?" "No," Hayes replied firmly. "You're our best chance at turning the tide. Your abilities make you unpredictable. Something the Scourge doesn't understand. That gives us an advantage." Clara Bennett raised her hand timidly. "But how do we use that advantage? What's the plan?" Hayes turned to her, his expression grim. "We strike back. We target their main operations, disrupt their supply lines, and gather intelligence, but most importantly, we hit them where it hurts. Their mothership. The room fell silent. The mothership was the source of the Scourge's power, orbiting Earth like a vulture circling its prey. Taking it down would cripple their forces, but it was also the most dangerous mission they could attempt. The ship was heavily guarded, equipped with advanced weaponry and protected by impenetrable shields. "We'll need to train harder," Hayes continued. "Every one of you will play a critical role. Emma, your light manipulation will help us navigate the ship's interior. Jake, your strength and speed will be essential in combat. Lisa, you and Ben will handle any obstacles requiring precision. Marcus, your flames will provide cover, and Clara, your voice will disable their systems." The group exchanged glances, steeling themselves for what lay ahead. None of them doubted the risks, but they also knew there was no turning back. If they didn't act, humanity would face extinction. Training intensified over the following weeks. The survivors pushed themselves to their limits, honing their abilities and learning new strategies. Emma practiced creating illusions to confuse enemies, crafting realistic holograms that could mimic people or objects. Jake focused on endurance, running drills until his muscles burned and his lungs ached. Lisa worked with Ben to refine his telekinesis, teaching him how to focus his energy and avoid distractions. Marcus experimented with shaping his flames into tools, a fiery whip, a molten blade, and Clara perfected her aim, targeting specific areas with her sonic blasts. Despite the grueling schedule, the group found moments of levity. During breaks, they shared stories, laughed at inside jokes, and supported each other through tough times. Emma admired Marcus's optimism, even when things seemed hopeless. Jake teased Clara about her love of old movies, which she watched late at night to unwind. Ben adored everyone, especially Lisa, who never let him feel scared or alone. As the mission approached, tension mounted. The survivors spent hours reviewing blueprints of the mothership, memorizing every corridor, hatch, and control panel. They rehearsed their roles repeatedly, ensuring they were prepared for any scenario. Agent Hayes drilled them on communication, protocols emphasizing the importance of staying in sync during the operation. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the group gathered outside to watch the stars. The sky was clear, dotted with countless pinpricks of light. Emma tilted her head back, imagining what lay beyond the atmosphere. "Do you think there's life out there?" she asked softly. "Other civilizations like the Scourge?" "Maybe," Jake replied, shrugging. "But if they're anything like these guys, I'm glad we haven't met them yet." Marcus chuckled, lighting a small flame in his palm. "Let's focus on surviving this first, huh? One alien invasion at a time." Clara nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. "Do you think we'll really make it? Onto the ship, I mean." Emma glanced at her, her eyes steady. "We have to. There's no other choice." The day of the mission arrived sooner than anyone expected. Dressed in sleek black suits designed to protect them from the harsh conditions of space, the survivors boarded a spacecraft piloted by a team of elite operatives. The ride was tense, with everyone lost in their thoughts. Emma gripped the armrests of her seat, her heart pounding as the ship ascended higher and higher. Through the window, she watched the curve of the Earth grow smaller, replaced by the vastness of space. When they reached the mothership, the sight took their breath away. It was enormous, a sprawling structure covered in jagged spires and glowing panels. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, reflecting the light of nearby stars. Alien symbols pulsed along its exterior, casting an eerie glow that made it look alive. "This is it," Hayes said over the comlink. "Remember your training. Stay focused and trust each other." The team nodded, exchanging determined glances. As the spacecraft docked, Emma led the way, creating a bright orb of light to illuminate the dim corridors. Jake followed closely, his heightened senses alert for danger. Lisa carried Ben, whose telekinetic powers would help them bypass locked doors and traps. Marcus and Clara brought up the rear, ready to defend the group at a moment's notice. Inside the ship, the air was cold and sterile, filled with strange humming sounds. The walls glowed faintly, casting an unnatural light that made everyone uneasy. The survivors moved cautiously, sticking to the shadows. They encountered alien creatures, tall, insect-like beings with multiple limbs and glowing eyes, but Jake's speed and Clara's voice kept them at bay. At one point, the team stumbled upon a chamber filled with pods containing human bodies. Some were still alive, suspended in a state of stasis. Lisa gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. "They're harvesting them," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Like animals." Emma clenched her fists, anger surging through her. "Not anymore," she said firmly. "We're ending this." The group pressed on, navigating the labyrinthine structure toward the core of the ship. Along the way, they faced numerous challenges: locked doors, security drones, and hostile aliens, but their teamwork and determination saw them through. Emma used her illusions to distract enemies, Jake's reflexes allowed them to evade capture, and Ben's telekinesis helped them overcome obstacles. Marcus's flames provided cover, while Clara's sonic blasts disabled systems and cleared paths. Finally, they reached the heart of the mothership, a massive chamber housing the central power core. The device pulsed with energy, its surface crackling with electricity. Alien technicians scurried around, monitoring consoles and adjusting settings. "This is it," Emma said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "We shut this down and the whole ship goes down with it." The group sprang into action, fending off waves of enemies as Emma approached the core. Using her light manipulation, she created a dazzling burst that blinded the technicians and disrupted the core's stability. The destruction of the alien mothership marked a turning point in humanity's fight against the Scourge. Without their central command, the invaders' forces became disorganized and scattered. Cities that had been under siege began to push back, reclaiming streets and neighborhoods block by block. The survivors, Emma Wilson, Jake, Lisa Carter, Ben, Marcus Doyle, and Clara Bennett, were hailed as heroes. Their daring mission aboard the mothership had not only crippled the Scourge's operations but also ignited a spark of hope across the globe. But for the group, the victory was bittersweet. They had saved countless lives, yet the cost weighed heavily on them. The scars of battle, both physical and emotional, lingered. Emma often found herself staring at her hands, which still glowed faintly, even when she wasn't using her abilities. She wondered how much of her old self remained. Was she still just Emma, the curious girl who loved science fiction stories? Or had she become something else entirely? Jake struggled with his own identity too. His newfound strength and speed made him feel like a superhero, but they also isolated him from others. He couldn't play basketball with his friends anymore without worrying about accidentally breaking someone's arm. At night, he lay awake, replaying moments from the mission in his mind. The sound of collapsing corridors, the sight of enemy creatures falling to his fists. It all felt surreal, like fragments of a nightmare he couldn't escape. Lisa spent most of her time with Ben, shielding him from the world. Her little boy had grown so much since the attack on the ice cream shop. He could now lift entire pieces of furniture with ease and move objects with precision that defied his age. But Lisa worried about what the future held for him. Would society accept him? Or would people fear him because of what he could do? Marcus tried to stay positive, cracking jokes and offering encouragement whenever the mood grew heavy. Yet even he couldn't ignore the toll the mission had taken. His pyrokinetic powers were stronger than ever, but controlling them required constant focus. One slip-up could mean disaster. And then there was Clara, whose quiet determination masked a deep well of anxiety. Using her voice as a weapon left her physically drained, and the pressure to perform perfectly gnawed at her confidence. Despite these challenges, the group stayed close, leaning on each other for support. They returned to Maplewood after weeks of debriefings and medical evaluations, hoping to find some semblance of normalcy. The town was slowly rebuilding, its residents working tirelessly to repair homes and businesses damaged during the invasion. People greeted the survivors warmly, thanking them for their bravery. Some even treated them like celebrities, asking for autographs or selfies. But beneath the smiles and gratitude, There was an unspoken tension, a reminder that life would never truly be the same. Agent Ryan Hayes accompanied the group back to Maplewood, ensuring their transition went smoothly. He had grown fond of them. Over the months, seeing them not just as weapons but as individuals with dreams and fears. "You've done something incredible," he told them one evening, sitting around a campfire outside the remains of Scoops and Smiles. "But remember, this isn't the end. There's still work to be done." Emma nodded, gazing into the flames. "What happens next?" she asked. "Do we keep fighting?" Hayes hesitated before answering. "For now, you rest. Rebuild your lives. But if the scourge returns or if another threat emerges, you'll be ready. You've proven that humanity can adapt, evolve, and overcome." The words offered little comfort. None of them wanted to think about another invasion, but they knew Hayes was right. The universe was vast, filled with unknown dangers. Destroying the mothership had bought Earth time, but it hadn't erased the possibility of future attacks. In the weeks that followed, the survivors settled into a fragile routine. Emma threw herself into studying, devouring books about physics and biology in an effort to understand her powers better. She spent hours experimenting with her light manipulation, creating intricate patterns and shapes. Sometimes she imagined herself as a character in one of her favorite sci-fi novels, a hero wielding extraordinary abilities to protect the innocent. Other times, she longed for the simplicity of her old life, before aliens and explosions changed everything. Jake joined a local gym, channeling his energy into workouts that pushed his body to its limits. Lifting weights and running sprints helped him release some of the pent-up frustration he felt. Occasionally, he sparred with Marcus, testing his reflexes and learning new techniques. Though Jake enjoyed the physical challenge, he couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't belong, not fully. He was stronger and faster than anyone else, and that difference set him apart in ways he couldn't ignore. Lisa enrolled Ben in art classes, hoping to nurture his creativity alongside his powers. The boy loved painting, filling canvases with vibrant colors and imaginative designs. His telekinesis added a unique twist to his artwork. He could make brushes float and paint swirl in midair. Watching him create brought Lisa joy, though her protective instincts never faded. She kept a close eye on him, ensuring he didn't overexert himself or draw unwanted attention. Marcus rebuilt his old fire station, volunteering his time to help others. His pyrokinetic abilities proved useful in controlled settings, allowing him to assist with welding repairs and hazardous material cleanups. The townspeople admired his courage and generosity, though rumors about his powers spread quickly. Some whispered behind his back, calling him a freak or a monster. Marcus ignored the insults, focusing instead on the good he could. Duclara found solace in music, spending hours practicing scales and composing melodies. Her voice remained her greatest asset and her biggest burden. Singing gave her peace, but every note reminded her of the battles she'd fought. Still, she refused to let fear dictate her life. She performed at community events, earning applause and admiration from audiences who marveled at her talent. As summer turned to fall, the group came together regularly, sharing meals and memories under the stars. They laughed about their misadventures, teased each other about quirks and habits, and supported one another through difficult days. Through it all, their bond grew stronger. They weren't just teammates, they were family. One crisp October evening, Emma stood on a hill overlooking Maplewood, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Jake joined her, carrying 2 cups of hot chocolate. "Here," he said, handing her one. "Thought you might need this." "Thanks," Emma replied, taking a sip. The warmth spread through her chest, chasing away the chill. For a moment, they simply stood side by side, enjoying the quiet beauty of the sunset. "You ever wonder what's out there?" Jake asked, nodding toward the sky. "Beyond Earth, I mean." "All the time," Emma admitted. "I used to dream about meeting aliens. Funny how reality turned out so different." Jake chuckled softly. "Yeah, not exactly what I had in mind either. But hey, at least we're alive to talk about it." Emma smiled, her eyes reflecting the fading light. Do you think we'll ever see another ship? Another invasion? Jake shrugged. Maybe. But if we do, we'll be ready. We've got each other. His words reassured her, though uncertainty still lingered. The universe was vast and unpredictable, full of mysteries humanity might never fully understand. Yet standing there, with Jake, surrounded by the familiar sights and sounds of home, Emma felt a flicker of hope. They had faced the worst and come out stronger. Whatever the future held, they would face it together. Back in town, Lisa tucked Ben into bed, reading him a bedtime story about brave explorers and distant planets. Marcus stoked the fire at the rebuilt station, humming a tune as sparks danced in the air. Clara sat at her piano, letting her fingers glide across the keys, her voice rising in harmony with the melody. Each of them carried the weight of their experiences, but they also carried resilience, courage, and love. Maplewood continued to heal, its scars blending into the fabric of everyday life. The ruins of Scoops and Smiles became a memorial, adorned with flowers and messages of gratitude. Children played in the streets again, laughter echoing through the air. Life moved forward, shaped by loss, but driven by hope. And so, the survivors embraced their roles, not just as fighters but as builders, dreamers, and protectors. They had faced the unimaginable and emerged victorious. Though the road ahead remained uncertain, they knew one thing for sure: humanity's spirit was unbreakable. Together they would endure, adapt, and thrive. Months passed since the destruction of the alien mothership, and life in Maplewood began to settle into a new rhythm. The town had changed forever, its scars visible in the rebuilt streets and the memorial where Scoops and Smiles once stood. But amidst the rebuilding there was a sense of hope. People talked about the future with cautious optimism, knowing that the survivors, Emma Wilson, Jake, Lisa Carter, Ben, Marcus Doyle, and Clara Bennett, had given them a second chance. For Emma, the days were a mix of routine and wonder. She spent hours studying science books, trying to understand the energy that had transformed her and the others. Her light manipulation grew more refined. She could now create intricate patterns, from glowing constellations to shimmering animals that danced across walls. Sometimes she performed for the townspeople during community events, drawing smiles and applause. Yet, despite her growing confidence, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that their victory over the scourge wasn't the end of the story. Somewhere out there, beyond Earth's atmosphere, unknown threats might still lurk. Jake threw himself into helping around town, using his strength to assist with construction projects and heavy lifting. He became a local hero of sorts, always ready to lend a hand. But inside, he wrestled with doubts. His abilities set him apart, making it hard to connect with others. When he played basketball with kids at the park, he held back, afraid of accidentally hurting someone. At night, he stared at the stars, wondering if he would ever truly belong anywhere again. Lisa focused on raising Ben, determined to give him as normal a childhood as possible. Her little boy thrived, excelling in school and charming everyone with his creativity. His telekinetic powers continued to develop, and Lisa worked with him daily to ensure he stayed in control. Together they built model airplanes that floated in midair and painted murals that seemed to come alive. Still, Lisa worried about what the world might think of her son as he grew older. Would people see him as a gift or a threat? Marcus found purpose in volunteering at the fire station, where his pyrokinetic abilities proved invaluable. He helped repair equipment, cleared debris from accident sites, and even assisted with controlled burns to prevent wildfires. The townspeople respected him, though whispers about his powers persisted. Marcus didn't let it bother him. Instead, he focused on the good he could do, finding joy in every life he touched. Clara poured her heart into music, composing pieces that captured the emotions of their journey. Her voice remained her greatest strength, but she also learned to play instruments, adding depth to her performances. During concerts, she sang songs of resilience and hope, bringing tears to the eyes of those who listened, though her past haunted her. At times, Clara found peace in the knowledge that her abilities had saved lives. Despite their individual pursuits, the group stayed close, meeting regularly to share meals and memories. They laughed about old jokes, teased each other about quirks, and supported one another through tough times. Their bond had grown stronger through shared struggles, and they knew they could count on each other no matter what. One crisp winter evening, the group gathered at the hill overlooking Maplewood. Snow blanketed the ground, glistening under the moonlight. Emma brought a thermos of hot chocolate, while Jake carried blankets to keep everyone warm. Lisa and Ben snuggled together, sharing stories about the constellations above. Marcus built a small fire, its warmth chasing away the chill, and Clara strummed her guitar softly, filling the air with gentle melodies. As they sat together, Agent Ryan Hayes joined them unexpectedly. He approached cautiously, holding a folder in his hands. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, his breath visible in the cold air. "Of course," Emma replied, scooting over to make room. "What brings you here?" Hayes hesitated before speaking. "We've received some concerning reports," he said, opening the folder. Inside were images of strange signals detected by satellites orbiting Earth. "It seems we're not alone anymore." The group exchanged worried glances. "What kind of signals?" Jake asked, leaning forward. "They're faint, but they match patterns associated with the Scourge," Hayes explained. "It's possible remnants of their fleet are regrouping, or worse, another species has taken notice of Earth." A heavy silence fell over the group. They had fought so hard to protect their planet only to face the possibility of another invasion. Emma clenched her fists, her hands glowing faintly. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice steady, despite the fear in her heart. "For now, we monitor the situation," Hayes replied. "But if it comes to it, you'll be called upon again. You've proven yourselves capable of handling anything." Emma nodded, determination flickering in her eyes. "Then we'll be ready." The news cast a shadow over their evening, but it also reignited their resolve. They weren't just survivors anymore, they were humanity's first line of defense. Over the following weeks, they trained together in secret, honing their abilities and preparing for whatever might come next. Emma practiced combining her light manipulation with illusions, creating dazzling displays that could confuse enemies. Jake focused on strategy, learning how to lead and coordinate attacks. Lisa and Ben worked on precision, ensuring they could move objects with pinpoint accuracy. Marcus experimented with shaping his flames into weapons, while Clara perfected her aim, targeting specific areas with her sonic blasts. Though the threat loomed large, the group refused to let fear consume them. They embraced life fully, cherishing every moment with family and friends. Emma tutored younger kids in science, inspiring them to dream big. Jake coached a youth basketball team, teaching teamwork and perseverance. Lisa organized art shows featuring Ben's work, showcasing his talent to the community. Marcus hosted barbecues at the fire station, bringing people together with laughter and food. Clara performed at charity events, raising funds for those still recovering from the invasion. Their actions reminded everyone in Maplewood that even in the face of uncertainty, life went on. Hope flourished in unexpected ways, nurtured by the courage of those who refused to give up. One snowy morning, the group received word from Hayes. The signals had grown stronger. A massive object was approaching Earth, its trajectory suggesting it would enter the atmosphere within days. Panic spread across the globe as governments scrambled to prepare. But in Maplewood, the survivors stood tall, ready to face whatever came their way. "We've done this before," Emma said during a final meeting at the Hill. "We can do it again." Jake nodded, cracking a grin. "Yeah, and this time we'll hit 'em even harder." Lisa hugged Ben tightly, whispering words of encouragement. Marcus lit a small flame in his palm, its warmth symbolizing their unity. Clara sang a soft melody, her voice carrying strength and determination. Together, they boarded a spacecraft piloted by Hayes' team, heading toward the unknown. As they ascended into the sky, Emma watched Maplewood grow smaller below them. Her heart raced, but she felt a deep sense of purpose. They weren't just fighting for themselves, they were fighting for everyone who called Earth home. When they reached the object, they discovered it wasn't a ship, but a massive probe, bristling with sensors and weapons. Alien symbols pulsed, along its surface glowing ominously. The group sprang into action using their abilities to disable the probe systems. Emma created blinding flashes of light, disorienting its defenses. Jake moved with lightning speed, dismantling key components. Lisa and Ben worked together, manipulating parts with telekinesis. Marcus unleashed torrents of fire, melting circuits and connections. Clara's voice shattered critical panels, rendering the probe inert. With the probe neutralized, the group returned to Earth, greeted as heroes once again. The world celebrated their bravery, hailing them as saviors. But for Emma, Jake, Lisa, Ben, Marcus, and Clara, the victory meant something deeper. It wasn't just about defeating an enemy. It was about proving that humanity could adapt, evolve, and endure. In the months that followed, the group continued to live their lives, balancing normalcy with vigilance. They knew the universe was vast and unpredictable, full of mysteries they might never fully understand. But they also knew they weren't alone. They had each other, and together, they could face anything. As spring returned to Maplewood, flowers bloomed, trees sprouted fresh leaves, and the town buzzed with renewed energy. The survivors stood atop the hill once more, watching the sun rise over the horizon. Emma raised her hands, creating a glowing orb that illuminated the sky. Jake smiled, his eyes reflecting the light. Lisa held Ben close while Marcus and Clara shared a quiet laugh. They had faced the unimaginable and emerged victorious. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. For Maplewood, for humanity, and for the future, they would stand united. Proof that even in the darkest times, hope could shine brightest.